Welcome, everybody, to the Cardplayer Lifestyle Poker blog. This is Robbie Straczynski, and it's time for one of my poker dreams to come true. The great Daniel Negreanu has joined us, and he's been kind enough to give us some time and agree to be interviewed. And it's my birthday, so I could not be more excited.
Birthday, I didn't know that.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yes. Never mind. Happy birthday.
Thank you very much. This is one of the best birthday presents I've ever gotten, and thank you really very much. Let's do something really special. Put a lot of time into this, and I hope you all have a good time as well. Okay, so let's start off like this. About interviews and mainstream media, as far as I know, I don't think you've done official, like a media training course, except maybe from, PokerStars, maybe put you through some stuff like that. But you've probably done like 50 or 100 times as many interviews as any poker player. Do you ever prepare for an interview, and why or why not?
No, I don't. Actually, it's kind of funny you say that because I've never had any media training. PokerStars has offered it to a lot of our, PokerStars team pros and stuff. And there was one point we had this PR firm who I was going to do an interview with this guy from USA Today, and I'd already actually apparently done one with him, whatever. Uh-huh. And they wanted to do like a prep interview where we practice, and I'm like, yo, I don't practice. I did an hour thing. I'm like, I don't practice, right? So then I did the interview, and the person on the other, that was listening, because they were listening in, the PR people, and they're like, oh my God, I guess okay, you're okay then, But I was like, I don't need your help on this one. And I believe that to some degree, media training helps a lot of people who are uncomfortable with it. I'm not. And the last thing I'd want to do is have anyone sort of warp and change the way in which I communicate, because I communicate from a genuinely honest perspective, and I tell it like it is. And I wouldn't ever let myself to be muzzled, if you will, into saying something I didn't want to say.
Okay. Okay. No, but let's say, for example, in terms of at least the beginners, when you increase your poker skill, you read a book or something like that. Do you feel like having some sort of a training would make you a better interviewee?
Like I said, I think for a lot of people, that would be true. People that are uncomfortable on camera, that are not necessarily all that talkative. I talk plenty. Right?
Yeah.
I do. So I think that, if anything, you watch sports sometimes, and I watch these guys in hockey or whatever, and they're awful. The interview's they're like, so what do you think about what you need, you guys need to do? And then you say, well, you know what? We just keep giving it 110%. It's a team game where, it's all about the team, and, we just got to put some more pucks in it and, see how it goes. That's boring, man. Say something. They don't say anything. So people that are media trained end up saying nothing.
Okay. I like it. Very cool. Okay. So in that regard then, because you've done so many types of interviews, so many TV appearances, and now, of course, you're on Twitch interacting with everybody, what's your favorite form of being interviewed? Like audio, video, written, and any reason why?
I think, something like this, it's more conversational, I don't it was a while where I used to get these emailed interviews with all these questions, and it felt like a book report. I had to write it all out. So I definitely prefer being taped. Okay. Because often, and this happened many, many times in my career, where if you do, you get interviewed by someone, they're just writing stuff down here and there. They don't have the audio. Then you read it and you're like, wait a minute, but I didn't say that at all.
Okay.
You totally incorrectly paraphrase what I said.
Right. So now everything is being captured. You don't have to worry about that. What do you enjoy most about doing media and being interviewed?
Good question. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I think like I said, I'm obviously, I consider myself an ambassador for the game. Okay. So it's always an opportunity to get my thoughts out. And I've always got a lot of thoughts on a wide variety of topics. So, I get that it's part of the deal. And I do probably slightly less interviews now than I did, during the 2004, 2006 era, because there was a lot of different mediums that were really interested. Right. Having said that, I still think it's important. I think that because I have a loud voice, people typically want to hear what I have to say, whether they agree with it or not. They're typically interested in what I have to say.
Okay, interesting. Is there anything that you don't like or dislike about doing interviews?
Most definitely. There's specific types of interviewers who drive me up the wall. So they'll ask a question like this. They'll say, the question they want to ask is, so what do you do to prepare for a tournament? But they'll say it like this.
So when you're preparing for a tournament, like what do you do? Do you wake up in the morning, do you have breakfast, do you like get a good sleep, or do you like go over the final table, or do you like think about your opponents, or do you like just more to chill, or do you like to get engaged, or do you like to socialize with people? Let me answer the damn question.
Okay.
Just ask the question. I'll answer it. I hate it. That drives me nuts.
Okay. Well, I think based on the way I prepared it, that's not something you need to worry about, but that's good. Interesting stuff.
It's annoying.
Okay. Yeah, I hear that for sure. Okay, so let's reminisce a little bit about the past. You used to have a job as a salad bar manager, and you also used to work in a dinner theater. Did you have any, right?
Yeah.
Did you have any other interesting jobs, or you have any other poignant memories of having a real job back in the day?
Oh my God, yeah. I was what you call a sandwich artiste. I worked at Subway, and I could make a turkey bacon in 24.7 seconds. If I would have stuck with that career as a Subway sandwich artiste, I could have been huge. Instead of having Jared, who's a pedophile, as their front man, I could have been the guy, whipping up the sandwiches. And this is back when Subway used to cut the bread from the top and then pull it out, and we fit more in. Oh my God, I was good, bro. But then I found this game of poker thing, and I ruined my Subway career.
Right. Well, you would have been in the Subway Hall of Fame, I'm sure, by now.
Guaranteed, and that's my biggest regret is, I could have had a big career. Sandwich artiste would have gone down in history, maybe as one of the greatest ever. And I don't know if my skills are as sharp, because without practice, I don't make sandwiches anymore. I don't even eat bread. So.
Okay. Okay, again, about the past. So back at the start of the Full Contact Poker site, that's your site, you used to sit for hours and hours and answer emails individually, according to your agent, to Brian Ballsbaugh, and you used to come to the World Series with your computer, with your laptop, enter all the stats. Can you tell us a little bit about that era, I guess, where you were just very, very involved and with your computer, lugging it everywhere, I guess, trying to make it, or
Well, actually, when that was happening, that was before computers. I didn't even have a laptop then.
Oh.
I used to use this book, I actually still have it, I think, where I would track all my results in those old school, big black thick notebooks, where I would track my day, I would track results based on day. So I could tell you how I did on Monday afternoons versus Thursday evenings. I could tell you how I did on sessions that were less than 6 hours, more than 6 hours, all without software. I also would grade my play. So regardless of a win or a loss, right? Because that doesn't matter. I would, write notes on how I felt, and I would give myself an A, a B, a C, depending on how well I played. So sometimes I might lose, but give myself an A+. And other times I might win, and I'll give myself a D. And I would also write mental notes. This is back when smoking was legal at the table. And there were times where I'd write, guy on my left is smoking in my face like a chimney. I'm tilted. I feel uncomfortable. I'm annoyed, right? And then I'll move to the other side of the table, and I feel better, much more focused, much more relaxed, much more calm. And I would write down, my emotional state, at different stages of a session.
Mm-hmm. And at what point did you go over those notes?
It's less about going over it. That's less important than actually writing it out. So thinking it out loud, discussing it with people, or, writing it out, that's therapeutic in itself, right? So it wasn't like I wrote all these notes and then would go back and go, okay, so this and this. I mean, I'd look at them occasionally,
right,
but the value wasn't in the looking back. It was in the process of actually being clear on my thoughts. Yeah. Very
cool. Okay. You mentioned at the Players Panel at the American Poker Awards, the conference portion, that back in the day you used to run poker games. I'm not sure what does that mean, that you used to run games?
Well, I mean, there was private games, right? Okay. Back in Toronto, there's a place called the Bridge Club.
Okay.
And this guy, John Jr., used to run them, but then he would have me basically run the game, which meant people would come in and I would give them chips. I would run the books and, balance the budget, make sure the dealers were, going in and out. Also credit, because that was a big part of private games. Just, somebody needed credit, I'd write it down. And I would track of the rake. And the rake was absurd back then. We played 10 at Hold'em.
Okay.
And the rate is $10. Okay.
Per
$10. Basically, yeah. Basically,
Wow.
5% up to $10. Plus, people tipped about at least $2.50 was the minimum tip. So people often tip $7.50 or $10. So what would happen is we'd start a game at around 8 p.m.
Yeah.
And by, I'd say by 1 a.m., there'd be 7 or 8 handed, and they'd all be losing. 7 or 8 handed, all losing. And then we factored it in it took about 6 hours for all the original buy-ins. to be
disappear.
down the tube, to be raked out. Yeah, so
Wow.
people talk about rake today, man. If you played in those days or in those mid joints, And the thing is, games were still beatable because people were really bad.
Interesting. Do you miss anything about that? Like back when you were doing it, like was it exciting for you?
No, I wouldn't say I miss running the games and stuff, but I do miss the romance and the drama of like being a young kid who's just grinding with the full sole focus of trying to like make a bankroll. So I've fantasized about making prop bets where I was just talking about this yesterday with someone, where if I had no money, right, just give me $1,000, no assets, no other, like how long would it take before I could turn that $1,000 into $1 million just from playing poker? And I thought about making that bet that I could do it in 3 years, which seems crazy, I know. That's a lot of confidence in myself. But I mean, like when I was young, I had the work ethic to sit and play for 12, 15 hours. If I was broke and owed money, I would be in one place, either sleeping or I would be playing. That was if ands or buts about it. I took it very, very seriously.
Cool. Okay. Well, in that regard, I guess, going back to that grind, I prepared this question actually before you did your tour for PokerStars of California, go on all the rooms. Do you ever have the urge now to go like to the Mirage or to the Bellagio and just like mix things up with some tourists and play 1-2?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't. I play very little poker. When I'm home and I'm not playing tournaments, I don't play at all. Like I don't play cash. I don't go to Bellagio. It's about a 20-minute drive, and that feels too far.
Okay.
I spend my free time at home. I love being home. It's my favorite place, and my couch is my favorite vacation spot in the world.
In Hearthstone, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, very cool. Let's say like this. Let's say someone wants to chart themselves a little bit of a path, and they are doing well at poker and stuff. Is that something going to like popping in unannounced to like someone who's like trying to get better known to be a better ambassador of the game? Is that something that you would recommend to someone to do? Because I feel like when you did it in California, like people were lining up to see. Obviously, you're a unique situation. But like, is that something that people ought to do? Is mix it up a little bit more with the 1-2 guys?
Well, I would look at that in a couple of ways. One, obviously, I get that people appreciate that. They like the idea of playing with a pro that they've seen on TV and stuff in small games, so it's fun for them.
Right.
I wouldn't say that there's any real reason why a 24-year-old grinder who's trying to make a living for himself should feel the responsibility of being an ambassador by going to play in the small games with other people. If they choose to because they think it'll be fun, great. Mm-hmm. But I certainly don't think that, there's enough immediate benefit for them to, instead of playing 10-20 no limit hold'em, go play 1-2 to appease those people. Like their bottom line won't benefit from that. Right. I don't think it'll actually be hurt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, this is sort of following up on something that you said. You're in the Poker Hall of Fame. You are where you are. You're 41 years old. You see that the path that you've taken, right, and it's all paid off. Would you want to do it over again? You say you fantasize about it, but like, would you want to relive it? Like, because I'm sure there were hard times along the way. Yeah,
well, that's the thing. So, and that's the question I was asked when we were having this conversation yesterday. Is like, would I want to do it? And I'm like, no, because I love my life so much right now.
Okay.
That that's part of like this one challenge that came to my table a while ago about playing 25-50 online, whether or not I could beat it over a significant sample size. That would require me, A, to leave the country because we can't, I can't play from Las Vegas. Right. And B, it would require me grinding like 8 to 10 hours a day online and like learning and really just soaking it in and just basically making that my life. Now, that part of that sounds fun, but the other big problem is like I like my life so much as is now. Right. Like I don't want to have to do that. And then like what would be the purpose? Just to prove to myself that, it's something I could do if I put my mind to. I believe I could, and I know people laugh at me for that because the games are super tough. I'm not saying that I'm a favorite because I don't know, but I have a lot of faith in my ability to adapt and learn and compete at every level. There's never been a poker environment that I've entered that I didn't figure out a way to be successful at, whether it was the high stakes games in Bobby's room, whether it was playing online tournaments or, cash, or, basically anything, tournaments, obviously. So I've never been one that's failed at anything I put my mind to when it comes to poker.
Okay. So if you don't want to go back and do it all over again, what are like a moment or two that you would want to relive? Let's say it's not like winning a bracelet or anything, but like some great moment like where you felt, wonderful, that was great, besides obviously like a huge win or something from a bracelet?
Well, I would describe it more as like, rather than a moment, I would describe it as a feeling. Like I did really, really well when my back was against the wall. Like if I had my case $400 on the table, it brought out this, crazy, hyper-focused version of myself that was like an absolute killer. Like to get this $400, you're going to have to fight me for it. I'm going to stab you in the face. You're going to try to take my money, but I'll kill you before you do. Like, and sometimes I would lose it, but there would be like, to get the money from me it would be like you trying to rip a basketball out of Shaquille O'Neal's hands. You're just not going to do it, and that's how I felt when I'd have my back against the wall. And there was something fun about that. I don't know, something romantic and fun about being on the verge of being broke. It was kind of exciting, a little bit of an adrenaline rush. And I don't have that anymore because I've got money.
Of course.
Okay. And the thing is I wouldn't want to play in games that are so big now that I could feel that feeling because it would just seem really stupid. Like I don't want to be in a game where I could lose like $7 million and be like, well, that was dumb.
I hear that. Okay.
Like, well, like 100, 200,000 blind, no limit hold'em. Whee!
No need. I hear that. Well, you set all these goals for yourself over the years to achieve what you've achieved. Do you feel that that's come at a price of any sort? That there's been a price tag for it?
No, quite the opposite. Goal setting is a big part of my life. I'm at my best when I'm looking to strive to become something, to achieve something, to better myself in one area or another. And, again, that's not for everyone necessarily because they don't necessarily deal with the failures as well as someone who's detached from the results. But I really think it's important to be a goal setter. If you want to be like the best version of yourself, if you want to achieve greatness, you first have to know where it is you're aiming to go and not just like randomly go through the flow. Like actually, I got into it a little bit with, not for the first time, but like the millionth time with Mason Malmuth.
Yeah.
Who's writing a book on psychology, and I thought to myself, like, there isn't anyone like more unqualified to write a book on this subject than he is.
Okay.
And he basically says, well, I don't goal set, I don't prepare, I don't do all this, and I don't believe him because it's not true. Like whether you believe it or not, whatever you're doing it for a reason. Right. You're doing it to achieve a certain goal. Whether you're conscious of that, whether you write that out and you're clear of that plan is another story. But don't kid yourself if you think when you start a company or if you have a goal, or you want to create something that you didn't have a goal in mind. Like when he started his company, what was the goal? To make money, right? For what? So he could live a life that he has now. Like that's a goal, right? Just because he didn't verbalize it didn't mean that it wasn't part of the process in terms of him getting there.
Gotcha. Okay. Is there something that you would change on the trajectory to try to do it over again, maybe better or differently?
I don't regret anything. Right? Because all the learning, all the mistakes that I made got me to a place where I learned to become who I am now. So, whether it was comments about Annie Duke, whether it was like how I handled different situations, those are all learning experiences for me that I gained a lot from. So I wouldn't want to do them over, but what I would do, for example, is if I saw someone my age making those same mistakes, if you will, I would offer my advice. I wouldn't make it for it, but I would be like, okay, so here's what you can learn from my path, and learn how to do this or that. And, try to take them under my wing, if you will, to some degree. But I don't, I don't believe that, like, if you're at a place in your life where you're super happy, you're happy with the way everything is, every decision you made
falls in line with that, right?
Matters. Like, it's part of it. So that concludes the mistakes. I look at it this way, and I tweeted this the other day. I said, every breakdown in your life is an opportunity for a breakthrough, right? Every mistake you make, every downtrodden moment where you're like up against it is an opportunity to like really learn something valuable. So without breakdowns, you don't have the breakthroughs quite as often. And I think that for all the faults, all the faults encompass the, the person I am today, and I can't be happier.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we're going to switch gears.
Said it.
We'll switch gears to Israel and Israelis. אתה לא מדבר עברית.
No, אני לא מדבר עברית.
That means Daniel doesn't speak Hebrew for those who don't. You've spoken publicly a few times about your Israeli family. If I don't know if to say their name, Oren and Regev, right? How did you originally get close to them back in Toronto?
So I met these guys in Toronto. Basically, we met we were in a gym class together, but that didn't matter in junior high. But I used to go to this pool hall, and they would always be at the pool hall too. So, we met through that, and then, we kind of became friendly, and I just loved, they reminded me of my family in terms of they were easygoing, always laughing, chilling out, having, fun, and we had a lot of similar interests, and then, we sort of got into poker together a little bit. But, it was really started with pool, video games. I used to basically spend almost every weekend at their place.
Wow.
And, in the morning, their parents would make habita and, put pilpel and everything, baboker, and so I would spend a lot of time with them, and, they became like brothers.
That's really cool. And that sort of remained the case all these years? You've kept in touch with them and everything?
Yeah, well, they moved to L.A.
Uh-huh.
So interestingly enough, I moved to Vegas, they moved to L.A. And I see them, I'd say, about once a year. When I go to L.A., I'll go over to the house and we'll reminisce and stuff. And that was just funny because back then, I never smoked pot ever. I didn't. I just wouldn't. But they smoked a lot of pot. So I never smoked except a couple times. There was a time where I was in a pickup truck with them, and they were smoking weed the whole way to this party we were going to for a while. And I didn't smoke, but they would blow it in my face and stuff like that. And then I got out of the truck, and the first thing I said was, I want a pizza. Not a slice, but an entire pizza. And then I ate a whole pizza.
Wow.
And they explained to me that I had the munchies.
Right.
I don't even know what that is, but I got second hand high from those guys. Yeah.
Well, I saw you tweeted out a picture of yourself playing, I guess, in one of their poker rooms in their houses or something. What's that experience like, just being in the home game with your buddies again?
What's great about them in terms of when we see each other, nothing's really changed. We've grown, we get along, although, Oren, he's become, we're politically at odds, in terms of our views, but it doesn't hamper our friendship, but we talk about stuff and he'll be he doesn't like Obama at all. He's no, but he likes Trump. I'm dude, fuck Trump, dude. It's Loco, He's Trump, yes, we need a guy with balls, So I'm okay, dude. Okay. These people do exist, but so we have some discussions about that, but they're always respectful. I enjoy having, he teaches me a lot too, because obviously he fought in the Israeli army, so he understands firsthand what's going on in the Middle East, and a lot of us are pundits from afar, we say we have it all figured out, that Israel's being unfair to Palestine, Palestinians are at fault. We don't know, right? Everything that we digest is secondhand based on and filtered down through sources that we cite as maybe very valuable, and others may say no, they're not. But unless we have first-hand information, it's hard for us to really understand the complexities of what's happening there on both sides. So he gives me a certainly a different take on what he experienced and what he sees, as being someone who fought. But so again, and obviously that's just one aspect of it. But I feel for a lot of people when they look at that issue, I find it hurts me when I hear anti-Semitism, because I feel people forgot how Israel was even created many, many years ago. There was a thing called the Holocaust, right? Where there was a lot of people were killed, and Israel was, the UN decided to give them Israel, which is a small little tiny speck just covered or surrounded by a bunch of groups that actually want them obliterated from the earth. They found this little spot, but they want them gone. So from that perspective, I totally get where some of it comes from. Some of the decisions with the settlements and, pushing the envelope of what is fair, in the face of the UN. I think they make some mistakes in that regard, right? So it's not without fault, but I feel there's a lost sensitivity to the struggles that the people have gone through in terms of their history. And maybe they are a little more protective of their people, but they went through something that no other group can say that they did, really.
Okay, interesting. Well, yeah, obviously, I think you've come out a few times saying that you're a supporter of Israel. Is there anything specific about the stereotypical Israeli, whatever that you enjoy or you connect with specifically?
Well, obviously, my extended family, the guys like Reverend Oren, they're just really laid back. They get along with everybody. They're fun-loving. They're just cool. They like to live. They like to they just really live their life, and they live it with a smile.
Yep.
Now, I've met some obnoxious Israelis, obnoxious. Like, oh my God, dude, you're so insane. Like, you know, I see him in a poker room and he's like, Daniel, the Messiah is coming. The Messiah is coming. Man, you know, right? And I'm like, oh, you mean Jesus? He already came. He's like, no, come on. It was not the Messiah. The real Messiah is coming. And I'm like, okay.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, there's a wide spectrum, just like in any culture. I don't think that you can stereotype and say that, you know, all people are one way or all people are another. But my experience has always been good and positive.
Okay. Well, I live in Israel, for those who don't know, and as someone who, you know, thank you very much for supporting this here. I appreciate it. Here's your chance. If you want to say something to the people of Israel, go for it.
Oh, to the people, I can say I only know bad words, right? I'll say, here's what you need to do, Israel. You need to get on board with poker, and have a tour, and then we can have like, you know, we'll call it the you know, the Afghani. No, I'm just kidding. We probably don't know that that's like. I think Israel could run a poker event, but I don't know if like we're going to have one in Afghanistan anytime soon. So I don't know if that we're going to create like the Middle East tour just yet. Okay.
Well, Toda Rabba. That means thank you. Okay. We'll go off Israel. We'll go to poker media. You have said that you feel that the production of poker shows should focus more on building characters. Do you feel that Alex Dreyfus and what he's doing with the Global Poker League is something that could build characters?
Possibly, yeah. Again, it's all going to come down to production, right, in terms of how they do it. He has some very unique visions for, you know, what might work. I mean, again, I don't know if it'll work or not, but I support, you know, the effort, and I hope that it does. What I'm really referring to, the way in which shows are produced. And there was a company called 441 Productions who did the World Series for many years, and they didn't come from poker. They came from, you know, the documentary genre, if you will. And what they did was they took every episode and they thought they wanted a story. So they wanted to make every episode a story. So it starts at the beginning, then there's a middle, and then there's an ending, right? So you have a hero, you have a villain, you have an actual story. And I think for many years, and I think they're trying to make an effort to get back to that, in you know, for example, in this year's World Series. But they just did an excellent job of just in capturing the drama. And, you know, they made some very good points. People remember, they talk about it on the water cooler, you know, Prahlad Friedman and Jeffrey Lissandro going at it over the anti-gate. They talk about Mike Matisow and Sean Khan going to war and like getting penalties. That's the stuff that people remember. They don't remember the hands many years later, but they remember, oh, that guy and this guy didn't, you know, they were feuding. So that's what encaptures people. Obviously, poker diehards, they love the poker analysis. They love all that kind of stuff, but that's limiting in terms of an audience if we focus too much on that. And I think that like for live streams that we do on the EPT, all that's fine, right? But when we have these mainstream broadcasts, we have to maintain and make sure that they are dumbed down to a certain degree. And, you know, they're easily digestible by a wide audience who maybe doesn't even like poker, but they're like, oh, you know, that guy with the hat, I can't wait till he loses, that tall guy with the black hat who tells everyone they're idiots.
Or like Obama said about you. Oh, yeah, you're the poker guy, right?
Yeah, right. So,
So the GPL might do that, you think?
I don't know. You know, we'll see. I mean, I don't know enough about, you know, how he's planning on producing it. I think that, you know, he's trying to cross over sort of the gaming phenomenon with, you know, seeing with live streaming of things like StarCraft, Warcraft, you know, even Hearthstone, and kind of just capturing that audience. That's a new audience really for poker.
That's fair. Okay, cool. Well, more than most professional poker players, I feel that you obviously follow what's going on in the poker world. You know, you're not just limited to, you know, your own personal activities. What do you want to see more of and less of from poker media outlets?
That's interesting. Because to be honest, I think they do a pretty good job overall. You know, I do. I think that, you know, with, you know, there's a wide spectrum of them. You know, there's always opinions. There's always, you know, we've got podcasts. I think there's enough information for people to digest. And there isn't something that sticks out to me that says, you know, oh, wow, they're doing a really poor job in this area or that area. I think that for the most part, like, you know, those that choose to be in the poker media do it because they love it, because they're passionate about it, and they want to do a good job. Like, it's not like they're the teachers who are on a tenure who just don't care anymore and they just sit at the front of the class and just like earn a paycheck. It feels like, you know, people in the poker media are always trying to create, and I guess if anything, I would say that continue to focus on growing the personality aspect of the players rather than the technical stuff. Like, so if you're going to do an interview, with someone on a break in a tournament, rather than go, so how's your tournament going so far?
Right.
And then you hear the answer of like, well, I've got like 22 BBs. I was like UTG +1, like pocket 6. Oh, brother, shut up. Like that's something different, and I think the Poker News girls do a great job of that. Like Sarah Grant, and she's of course, Christy Arnett used to, of making it fun, and making it lighthearted. Like, and obviously, my ex-love, Amanda Leatherman, I thought she was great at it because she didn't really talk about poker ever.
Okay.
It was always weird stuff. Like, what are you eating? What is that? That's gross. Let's do shots, So just like stuff that shows the personality, the aspect, like people's personality outside of just the game, because I think that's pretty boring. Nobody wants to hear it. I don't care.
Kind of like the card player lifestyle. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
There you
go.
Okay.
So how do you play ace queen under the gun with 17 BBs?
Okay, so we mentioned the Poker Hall of Fame before. Of course, you're a Hall of Famer. They just announced the new inductees, John Juanda, Jennifer Harmon. Is there something that you feel should change about the voting process or about the Poker Hall of Fame in general?
Oh, yeah, I have major concerns about it. I did before I got in. I use it. Like Tom McAvoy's usually my poster boy for a guy that didn't belong in the Hall of Fame based on the criteria, but that was politicked in because he really wanted to get in and then got the right people to get enough votes to get in. Where I compare the Poker Hall of Fame to other Hall of Fames, and I think other Hall of Fames, it doesn't matter. It doesn't say anywhere the criteria that you have to be a nice guy.
Right. It
doesn't have to say anywhere in the criteria as a player that you have to be an ambassador for the game.
Right.
And I think it's morphed and people say, oh, this guy did so much for the game. Da, da, da. Okay, but he didn't play against high-level competition. He didn't stand the test of time. He's not respected by his peers. He doesn't have a track record or a resume. And that's what the criteria is, right? We're not inducting people based on how nice they are. We should be basing it on how much they meet the merits. Now, that's not to say that one of the criteria for the builder category is what they've done for the game, which is why I put, people like Bruno Fatoussi and John Duthie on my list for induction several years ago because of what they've done. Like Bruno brought, was essentially the godfather of poker in France. He brought players over with the World Poker Tour there. John Duthie created the European Poker Tour, and obviously there's big controversy this year. And this is my other beef with it. And this is a lot of controversy over Devilfish.
Right.
There's a lot of people. And this was the first time Devilfish had ever been on the ballot. He was never on the ballot before, right? Thor Hansen was never on the ballot before. He got sick. He was obviously diagnosed with cancer, and then they put him on the Hall of Fame ballot. And now, Devilfish passed away, who I think is a great guy, and I do think he meets the criteria to absolutely to be inducted. But just because he died or just because Thor got sick, the sentimental aspect of it has no bearing on what we should be voting on, right? We should look at the candidates and look at the nominees and vote based on we think who best suits the criteria each and every year.
Right.
And again, I said, I think that, the competition was stiff, and I do think that Devilfish warrants a nomination. And if, the voters believe that he, earned it based on his results and based on his play and based on the respect of his peers, which I do think he has, not based on the fact that he was fun to play with, right? I don't think, he was a great guy. He was always funny. But as far as European players in the European, in the Hall of Fame, he wouldn't be in my top 3 or my top 2, because my top 2 would be John Duthie and Bruno Fatoussi in the builders category. And I think we should better define how people get in on the builders court. Like someone like Linda Johnson, who got in years ago, that was clearly a builders category because it wasn't based on resume, and which is fine. She obviously, earned that. But I wonder if we should have maybe 3 people a year, 2 being players and 1 being from the builders category, or 1 and 1, But I think 2 and 1 probably makes more sense.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Thanks for your thoughts on that. It's definitely been a hot button issue lately. Last media question. For a few months now, you've been posting QOTD, the question of the day. You've generated a lot of interesting discussions, so I'm just sort of wondering, what is your motive? What are you hoping to accomplish by doing that?
I'm being the Donald Trump of poker. The troll of poker, right? I'm trolling everybody. No, I do it because I enjoy it. I enjoy so I think this world, in a lot of ways, we've come to a place where everyone's so hypersensitive about saying anything controversial, right? Or anything that, is a hot button issue, whether it's race, religion, politics, or whatever. I'm certainly not afraid of these things. And I like the fact that we can use Twitter as a way to openly have these discussions, and I learn from both sides. And it's amazing how often I'm attacked for a question that I don't even put my opinion on. right? Like I'll say, I just not recently, I asked the question, I said, approximately 5% of tournament poker is represented by women. What do you think the number one reason is for that?
Right.
Right. I asked that question, and some of them, like a couple of feminazis, were like, "How dare you ask that question? What's the point? Who cares? Why are you saying that? Why are you saying that men are better than women?" I'm like, what the hell? I didn't even comment yet on my position, and I obviously have my view of it. And the reason I brought the question up was because I was curious, really, what people thought. Because there's a lot of talk about how, the number one reason why there's not more women represented is because they're treated poorly by men at the table, right? And I definitely think that's a factor. I do think it's an uncomfortable environment for women, but I don't believe it's the number one factor, right? I don't. I think that there's a couple other things that play into it. And one is, it was always, someone brought this up, it was always played in seedy environments, male-dominated, right? So the barrier for entry for women historically has been, difficult. But I also believe at the core, and this is not right or wrong, this just is a difference in our, in our interest, is I just think that women typically are less interested in strategy-based games like this than men are, right? That's not better, that's not worse. Same question I was going to ask this one today, actually, is men represent a small percentage of sales for romance novels, right? Why is that? What is the reason behind that? Is it because, what would be the reason? And I think that it's simply because we're built differently. Men have penises, women have vaginas, right? It's true. It's a fact, right? And it's different. So we have, in that regard, women, those novels typically speak to women a lot more than they do men. And that's not right or wrong, but I don't think there's a problem with celebrating our differences. I'm not ever saying that women are inferior. In fact, I've said quite the opposite. I said that if I took 50 men and 50 women off the street, and I gave them a 6-month tutorial on how to play poker, I'll bet a lot of money that the women would do better. Absolutely, as a whole. As a group, the women would do better. I do think, there's some outliers, and, studies show that maybe the very top might be male. And again, I'm not suggesting that that's true, but I genuinely believe that I could teach women to play better than men. So when I say that, I had a woman who was offended by that. By me saying, I think women are smart. I'm so offended. What the hell is happening to this world, man?
So you're just trying to get people to talk and communicate more, basically.
Yeah, I like it. I find it fun. And I get, I get that it's not a good decision in terms of PR, but I don't care, man. I enjoy being in the middle of these issues. I enjoy sharing my opinion. I enjoy hearing this outside of the others. What the biggest thing that's come out of this is the awareness of how much, I'm going to, for lack of a better term, PC bullshit has taken over and is essentially destroying the First Amendment. And if you look at, there's an article that was recently published about college campuses and how people are completely neglecting the First Amendment by trying to make hate speech or certain types and criminalizing it, right? Which is completely against free speech.
For sure.
And I don't think it's a good idea for people to use hate speech, but they have the right to do so. And you shouldn't be able to incriminate them based on that for whatever they say. Having said that, if you have a college campus and you're not okay with what people say, you have every right to say, that's not welcome here. But, to try to criminalize it or repress or censor, I think is way more dangerous than anything else. And I just think that so many people focus on language and they villainize people for using phrases that may not be considered politically correct rather than doing something about it. Bill Maher said something recently about how, people are using this. It's liberalism. It's lazy liberalism at its worst. In that now people choose to scold others rather than do something, right? So let's say you take a guy who's 65, 70 years old. He's been around a long time, and he says something, insensitive, where he says, "Oh my God, don't wear that. That looks pretty gay," right? He may have said that term before, and I said that when I was younger too. But we've come to realize that that term's kind of offensive.
Right.
Now, are we going to label this guy a bigot, hateful, angry man? Or are we going to just do the right thing, which is to say, hey, you know what? That term kind of offends, people today because it sort of demeans gays and makes it feel like, it's bad or it's negative. Or
let's teach them a little bit.
Yeah, I hear some people like Doyle, for example. Doyle's 82 years old. He grew up in Texas, right? He grew up with terminology and views on the world that are very different than what we see today.
Yep.
Now we have two choices. We can call him a racist, bigot, insensitive prick, which he's none of those things, or we can understand that, okay, he came from a different time, a different world, and if we really want to see social change, that takes time and understanding, right? And understanding that it doesn't happen overnight. So if all of a sudden the term illegal immigrant is villainized and we don't want to use it anymore, people that are using it in the midterm don't villainize them and call them racist.
Right.
For me, I used to say illegal immigrant because it just seemed to be the most accurate term to describe it. Then a lot of people spoke out about it, and they wanted to call it undocumented worker. I don't think that's an accurate description, undocumented worker. Now people use the term undocumented immigrant. I'm fine with that. Okay. That's not a problem. I think illegal immigrant's fine, but if most people have a problem with that, I have no problem saying undocumented immigrant. So change does happen, but there has to be patience. There has to be this. We have to avoid this idea that you have this epiphany that is this new way of speaking that everyone else who says this is offensive. And I actually reached out to Justin Bonomo, who did this video that was full of absolute inaccuracies, misleading definitions of what I said and paraphrasing in a very, very unfair way.
Okay.
And I reached out to him directly because I feel like that's what responsible people do. They don't go to do a video
public,
and trash somebody without actually reaching out to me at all, right? Especially when you're going to mischaracterize. Like Vanessa Selps and I have a great relationship, and I spoke to her about the issue, and she sent me a message that actually made me tear up because she let me know that she backed me up completely on the issue that we don't have a beef. I did say, an innocent comment on Twitter. I said, going to Monte Carlo to play with the big boys in the super high roller. When I wrote it, I didn't have any offense. She tweeted back at me saying, "And girls, K-bye," with a smiley face. So I thought she was joking, right? So that was funny. I'm like, oh yeah, because you're playing too. I got there, I sat down at her table, and I go, "Hey, all the big boys are here." Totally joking, right? And immediately I saw that she was upset, legitimately upset. And then so I said, "Are you upset? Is there something wrong?" And then she mentioned, it hurt her feelings, and we spoke about it at great length. And I told her, I was like, "Listen, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings by the term. I didn't, it had nothing to do with male or female. It's just a common phrase we use, Right. It wasn't, meant to be offensive in any way." And we've had great discussions about lots of different issues that we don't necessarily agree on, but we have civil discussion about. So Justin's mischaracterization that I'm not empathetic to minorities or that I don't listen or I don't understanding came off to me as very condescending, very self-righteous, and just very inaccurate. And he doesn't. It just and especially because he's quoting parts of my blog where he missed the part where I actually talked about my childhood and how many of my friends, the vast majority, were black and the struggles they went through that I could never understand ever. But I listened and I heard what my friends used to get beat up by cops for fun. Like, no joke. Their bikes would be trashed. They show up to school the next day with a bruise on their face. I'm like, "What's that about?" And they're like, "I don't want to talk about it." Right. Because they knew I couldn't understand. But so I get this idea of white privilege, right? But the idea that so this is a thing, right? So I get that, and I understand that I'm privileged because of the color of my skin. I get that. But when you demonize someone for that, that's based on this modern definition of racism, it's exactly that. When you say something like, "I don't trust what comes out of a rich white man's mouth," you're essentially labeling and based on solely the color of my skin and judging what I have to say based on the color of my skin. And isn't that, by this modern definition that the PC culture is pushing, the definition of racism? Right. When the only reason you're not listening is because of the fact that I'm white. So you're not listening to the content of what I'm saying. You're only looking at the fact that I'm white. That's what racism is based on what they're trying to say. So you can't have it both ways.
I certainly think that you're engendering a lot of discussion, and so you're certainly achieving that goal. On being a poker ambassador, you're the most influential poker player. I think everyone could pretty much agree on that. And you've got obviously a sponsorship deal with PokerStars. You said that you love being with PokerStars. Does anything that they ask you to do or that you do as your role, does it feel like work?
I wouldn't say, no, it doesn't really feel like work, because I don't overextend myself and I don't have to do too much. I mean, there are times when we may have a media day where I've got 7 or 8 interviews in a row. That kind of feels like work, especially when you're being asked the same questions over and over. But ultimately, I wouldn't associate with myself with any company that I felt like breached my integrity or that I had to say or do something that I didn't truly believe in. And there's been throughout the years many issues that I've stood against. Whether it was bleeding stacks in a high roller where I boycotted the tournament because they were not, giving people fresh stacks later, and I thought that was not fair for our customers. There's been several issues over the years, and obviously there's, an issue currently that's going on in terms of the VIP program and changes that are going there that I have a lot of internal conversations about. And I think that, in terms of what Amaya's done, and I think they've had a lot of learning curve in terms of how to deal or understand the customer base. And the way we rolled out information at times wasn't ideal, to say the least.
Okay.
And I've definitely voiced my opinion. There was a couple key things that, we had like 3 things come out after I took over that were already somewhat in the works, right?
Uh-huh.
But when you first roll out and you make these big changes, if everything you do is negative, right? Like, or 3 things that are going to be this is bad for you, this is bad for you, this is bad. You're like, well, when is the good stuff coming, right? So definitely, I've had some disagreements in terms of how information's released at times. But I mean, I realize that sometimes people make mistakes, companies make mistakes, and in this case, they've made several, I think. But
you'll be writing about that in your blog later this week.
Yeah, you're right. There's certainly definitely an issue in terms of I fully understand both sides of this, but I understand the player side a lot more in terms of the VIP program and having a promotion that starts on a January 1st.
Right.
That if you get to Supernova Elite, you're going to get benefits for the next year. And I don't, and again, communicating that in November, 11 out of the 12 months, I feel is, that's
Iffy.
something at the very least. Even though there's discussion of warnings, and there were talk of, in 2014 in October, they did mention that there'll be substantial changes potentially.
Right.
I think that you have to be a lot more clear and transparent, and I'm a big believer in that. And if I ever felt as though things were moving in a direction that were not in line with my integrity, I would never ever move forward with something, with a company or with anything, and wear a patch. There's no amount of money. I have money. I don't. It's not like my integrity is not for sale. So an issue like this is a hot button issue, and the misconception I think a lot of times is people think that I'll say what I have to say because I'm being paid. Not the case. Historically,
you don't get paid every time you say the word PokerStars? What do you mean?
No, not the case presently, and never the case in the future. If I feel like they're doing something unjust, I will speak. First, what I'll do is the responsible thing, which is have internal conversations about changing minds and hearts and understanding the deeper issue before I just go public and go, vomit all over the place. That doesn't do anyone a service. So being tempered, being understanding and thinking about things from both sides before I make an ultimate decision. And then once I have all the information, if it's at odds with the way that I've, with my own personal integrity, then I'll make a decision based on that, and it won't be to breach it. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, that's pretty clear. I mean, you've been with PokerStars for a long time, and I think I don't know, I imagine a lot of people are in this situation, but no one's so public. You've met with both Yishai Steinberg, and David Bazov. What can you tell us about having spoken with each of them? What would you say is similar about them, or what sets them apart from one another? I think that'd be interesting to hear.
Well, I have deep admiration for both. I like both very much. Shy, which I called him Shy. His name's Issa, but we always called him Shy. I've known him since I was 17 years old.
There's
kidding.
Actually
a video. Yeah, There's a video from way back when where we were in a tournament together in an underground club, and I remember coming when I busted him. He had 2 threes, went all in. I called kings, and then we discussed the hand later. But I've always had a deep respect for what he created with PokerStars, and did an amazing job, I think, of being player friendly and really to almost to a fault, you could say. At times, really going above and beyond for the players. And in some ways, I think part of that culture that was created one in which players got so used to having all these benefits. But the question is whether they're actually sustainable long term. And, what we've seen is let's be frank, we've seen sort of a decrease in the industry as a whole, not just for PokerStars, and it becoming tougher and tougher for recreational players. I know a statistic that depositing players are losing their deposits, their $20 deposits, 40% faster than previous years.
Right.
That's a problem, and that's a dangerous thing. So changes were inevitable. Now, moving forward to David Bazov, I think this guy's brilliant. He's very, very smart. He wants to make the company bigger and better. He's obviously running a public company now, which changes things, right? When you have a private company, you're not beholden to your shareholders. But once you've become public, there are things that you have to do to make sure that you're looking to increase profits. That's what a public business does, right? That's publicly traded. You're always looking to increase profit margins. So they're expanding, sportsbook, casino, daily fantasy sports, making adjustments to some of the VIP programs that were existing before. The key, I think, for David as well, is a new environment for him, understanding, which we'll call them the 2%, which is the professional players on the site, their value to the site, how much they bring in terms of both revenue and, filling seats and creating teams. So there's really sort of the question of, these players are valuable and they're good for the site, but at the same time, there's a point where it's whoa, now they're actually, they could hurt, right? So it's you get to this point where you're here and they're valuable, and then all of a sudden, if it becomes overrun by that, if it hurts the player experience for the recreational player, then we might see a steady, decline. So these are things you have to think about. David, I think, is very open to listening. He's always going to be looking to expand, and he has very, very different ways of marketing the company and some different verticals that he wants to take that I think are genius. I really support like these changes. I mean, I actually would have made them a long, long time ago, right? Really would have. I've always been a big believer that the benefits should go to the recreational players first and foremost, and then as a result, pros will benefit from that because they'll play longer, they'll be available longer, and they get the money in the end anyways, right?
Yeah.
I tell this story, and I've told it before, and I'd like to if I have a moment here.
As much time as you want.
Yeah, when I used to run poker clubs, there was a guy named Moshe. He was an Israeli guy, and he used to play at our club called Check and Raise. He was a big fish, very, very bad, right? He lost, though he was the biggest loser for 3 straight months, okay? And this place was beautiful. It had high ceilings. It had free food, free rake. Everything was clean, no smoking. Beautiful place. Well, after 3 months, Moshe said, you know what? I'm going to start my own club. And I have friends. So he opened a club down the street that was in a basement. It was disgusting. It was filthy. The food was expensive. The rake was high. But his friends played there and he played there. What do you think happened 2 weeks later? Check and Raise was empty, and Moshe's place was full. What does that tell you? That tells you that the most important players are always going to be those that contribute to the game, those that are typically losing players, because they're the ones that bring the pros. If pros all lost money, they wouldn't play, right? They're only going to play if there's equity for them. So create the equity first, and there's ways to do that. There's strategic ways in which, as a company, we can do that. And what we've done for so many years is we've been really catering to the pros, and we've given them all the bonuses and stuff. And what that's done is it's created an ecosystem that has been unfair for rec players. Aside from all the third party, there's another thing that's interesting to note is we talk about third-party software like HUDs, right? Average depositing player on PokerStars deposits $20.
That's it?
Wow. Okay. Yeah, $20. The average cost of one of these, tracking softwares is about $100, right? So right off the bat, these pros have an advantage already because they're better. Right. And now they have this additional software that the average player just simply can't afford anyway, because if they're putting $20 in, they're not going to spend the $100 on tracking software. So it's already created an unlevel playing field. So I absolutely support getting rid of that, getting rid of seed scripting, making the game more accessible to recreational players, do more to promote their play. Having said that, as I said prior, it's a very delicate balance between what we've promised players in terms of the VIP programs and the sports Novas. We have to make sure that we give enough lead time for these changes, right? Again, I think these changes were inevitable, whether it was prior management or current management. The industry shrinking, something had to happen, right? There was going to be changes. It would be naive to think that wasn't the case, right? So the real question is, what is fair in terms of how players are treated in terms of like what was guaranteed, what was promised them. So for example, I use this analogy, just say this wouldn't be okay. Imagine McDonald's had a promotion where they said, if you buy a Big Mac for 30 straight days, at the end of that, we will give you a Ferrari, right? Okay. And then on day 29, right? Yeah. They say, well, we've decided to change the promotion for the betterment of the customers, and now instead of a Ferrari, you'll be getting a Honda Civic. Yeah. Right? So that's going to not entice anyone, right. And of course, it'd be disingenuous from the outset of the promotion. So I'm a big believer in being transparent, and if mistakes were made, I believe it's very, very important for the company as a whole to make good on those types of promises in one way or another. So again, that's something that's internally being discussed, and I don't know. So we'll see what happens. Again, I'm not privy to say just yet because I don't think anything's been finalized. But it certainly is something that I'm taking on passionately, and I see as a very, very yeah. Okay. Well, one other question about ambassadorship with the other organization, and then we'll take a quick break. Poker Central, you're affiliated with them. The 24/7 Poker Network was launched on October 1st. Phil Hellmuth, Antonio Fondiari. Why did you sign on with them, and what are your hopes in general for the network and your future with them? Right. Well, first and foremost, Kerry Katz is the real sort of innovator for the idea. He's funding it. He's a great guy. He's been playing these high rollers for a long time, started these high roller area. And he has a vision for a network that could, we looked at the numbers, and, so the golf channel makes X. The tennis channel makes, less than X. He believes that poker could be somewhere in between. More people play poker than tennis and golf combined, right? So the question is, would they watch it? Now, the strategy has been, it's a slow developing thing when you start a network like this, and I think they're doing things in a very, very smart way.
Okay.
So they're not on they're not on DirecTV, they're not on television yet. It's starting very, very small, but the base is growing organically in a new technological age where people do watch
on
shows
their devices, right?
They watch it on Roku. They watch on different, in different areas. It's not necessarily, television isn't the be-all, end-all. It's certainly not the place that you need to start. So the network growing on a grassroots level in the way that it is, starting to build momentum, is part of the plan that I think makes more sense than just randomly throwing it out on TV and hoping that it works, right?
Okay.
Developing a fan base, developing a viewership, and then slowly but surely building distribution into new areas, I think, is the way to go. It's much more difficult to deal with cable companies like Cox or DirecTV. Okay. It requires
Makes sense.
A lot more vetting than it does for some of these other areas. Because I know a lot of people are saying, well, where do I watch it, right?
Right.
Obviously, if you get a Roku box, that's available. If you get, on your Xbox 360, and that's a platform that a vast majority of people do have.
Sure.
So it hits a lot of homes. So the goal really now is to get the most eyeballs possible on it, and then grow it in such a way that we create original content, right? That's really, really good, and fun, and they're starting to do that already, despite the distribution being small. And I have an idea for a show myself that we'll, be putting together that will, hopefully be enjoyed by people, and when we continue to grow, is going to be sort of a flagship that kind of makes people want to go watch the network.
Cool. Well, we'll definitely be asking you some more acting and show type of questions as we go on. We're going to take a short little break, and we'll be back right after.
Seat open, table 1. Hey, wait a sec. I know this guy. He sat on my left yesterday. I wish I remember how he played.
You should have taken notes.
Oh, come on. I'm not bringing a notebook to the table. I'll look like a fish.
You don't have to. There's an app for that. Poker Notes Live. Notice a tell? Want to keep track of your live poker sessions? Use the Poker Notes Live app to tag and classify your opponents. Record your wins and losses and improve your overall performance at the poker table. Poker Notes Live. Get it now on Google Play and the App Store. Don't ante up without it. Brought to you by CardplayerLifestyle.com.
Let's switch over to charity work. Welcome back, everybody. This is Daniel Negreanu, of course. Daniel, you're involved in tons of different types of charity work, hosting poker tournaments, St. Jude's fundraisers, and you've also done some very unique things. Like I saw there was a time, for example, where you went to I believe to a supermarket and you paid for people's groceries on Thanksgiving. I imagine you must get approached a lot to give of your time and money for charity. My question is like this. Someone in your position, you probably see a lot of pain and a lot of hurt in the world, much more probably than the average person. People falling on tough times. Does that affect you? How does that affect you? Do you feel like it empowers you to do something more? Or does it make you feel helpless?
Well, there's two ways. In the poker community, obviously people fall on hard times in terms of like going broke or whatever, but I don't necessarily have a ton of empathy in terms of like, have to make a difference for them specifically, because there's bigger problems, right? Than a guy who's down on his luck playing 5-10 no limit hold'em. The fact that he can even do that, where some people are struggling to get food and just survive, that's where I spend a lot more of my focus. As far as the grocery store thing, it's actually really fun. What I do is, I do this all the time. Anytime I do go to a grocery store, which is rare because I have assistants, but when I'm on the road especially, is I do this because I think it's fun. So after I pay my groceries, I tell the cashier that we're going to play this little game, right? Okay. So I said, so then at the end I give her $300, right? Okay. Typically $300 or whatever. Yeah, usually $300. And then I say, okay, here's what you're going to do. You're going to pick who you're going to buy groceries for the rest of the day until the $300 is gone. Wow. Right? I leave, right? So I don't know who, they don't know it was me. Wow. And so basically what I've done here is I feel like I've created an opportunity for two people. For the people who are receiving the free groceries, right? They give a chance to receive and realize like, wow, you know what? There are people in the world that want to make a difference. And I also give the gift of giving to the cashier, right? Because the cashier gets filled up with the warm and fuzzies, because they're the ones that, made this possible for them. Right. And, there are times where I'll go hide in the grocery store somewhere because I just want to watch, I don't want to I don't want the accolades. I don't want them to come to me because I wanted to leave the moment there. But I like to see it, you know.
That's so
and
beautiful.
and I got caught one time. Actually, it was in Toronto not too long ago, and I got caught. I was behind in my thing, and the lady said it was, you know, she told on me or whatever. She's like, that guy paid or whatever. And then they went like this. They go, come here. And then I was walking out or whatever. And then I realized, no, they want to pay their gratitude, so I will. And it was very, very sweet. And they appreciate it. And then they said they're going to pay it forward. And like, I believe that's a world that works, you know, where we like little things like that don't seem like a big deal, especially, you know, the $300 is not going to change my life. And I'm not looking for, you know, oohs and like, oh my God, you know, 300. But like, it's really just more a case of like little ways where we can make a difference
Really
for other
beautiful.
people. And it inspires, like, you know, them to do it for other people. No question. I think it does. You know, like, what would you do? Like, you know, think about that. You're going through the grocery line and someone says, you know, someone in front of you just paid for it. Like, what would be your first instinct? Your first instinct is like,
I should have
wow.
bought more.
Yeah. So what is you're typically going to feel good about it.
Right.
Right. You're going to feel like, wow, I want to do this for somebody else.
Right.
Right. So that's the world that works, where we're all looking out for each other in very small ways, you know, and I think it adds up.
That's really beautiful. That's a great, that warms my heart. That's really beautiful. You accomplished a bucket list item recently. You went to, I believe it was called the Plant Restaurant, vegan restaurant, right? You called it a bucket list item, right? In Asheville,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What other items do you have on your bucket list?
Well, I mean, I definitely think that, you know, one of those is bringing hockey to Las Vegas, and that's
Okay.
happening.
That's
And we're gonna do
happening.
that. Game one will just be like, give me chills, you know, it'll be real awesome. I grew up in Canada, I'm a Canadian, and, you know, it's in our blood, if you will. So, right? So that would be something that would be great, is to sit, you know, center ice for a Las Vegas game.
Drop the puck?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Very cool. Okay. So you decide what you do every day, right? But you're also big on having a schedule. You can do whatever you want. How do you plan your day out? How do you schedule it, and how far in advance? Is that something that your assistant Patty does for you, for example?
No, I do that myself.
Okay.
Typically Sundays. Sundays is a day that I kind of like don't just relax, and I'll basically map out. My weeks are pretty, you know, much, you know, filled up with a schedule already. Like, I go to the gym Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday at noon, the crack of noon. Wake up at 10:30 every morning. Right now I'm playing Soccer only twice a week. I'm playing Mondays and Wednesdays. I got a game in 2.5 hours.
Okay.
And I practice with my soccer coach as well.
We won't go
twice a
that
week.
long. Don't worry. 2.5 hours.
No, it's fine. So, you know, there's that, and then there's Hearthstone play, and there's like my shows that I catch up on. And I don't have what I call a PSP in the works right now, which is a personal strategic plan.
Okay.
I will have one by January 1st, you know, and I'll start something basically what I do is I do like a 3-month goal, where maybe it's read a specific amount of books, or it's like have a physical fitness goal or a poker goal or something like that.
Right. Okay. I did mention Patty before. I just want to give her a big shout out. Almost 3 years ago, she agreed to be interviewed here on Cardplayer Lifestyle, and that was just ridiculously awesome. So shout out to Patty, and please send my regards. We've stayed in touch. She's awesome. You set yourself a yearly goal. Do you also have like 5-year goals, 10-year goals, and, you know, like a vision for yourself, you know, then, you know, for 5 years, 10 years from now?
I have a vision that I wouldn't say it's necessarily 5 or 10 years down the road. My vision goes to the deathbed, right? And that, like, I feel like, so if you did this, right, if you chose to start at the end, right, and ask yourself, what do you want to have written on your tombstone?
Okay.
Do you really? So is it going to matter when on your tombstone that you were a great poker player that won 2 WPTs, a player of the year? Is that going to matter, or what else is going to matter? You know, he was a good role model for people around him. He inspired others to be the greater version of themselves. He was a good friend. He was a good husband, you know, father, good pillar in the community. Like, those are the things that on an epitaph are going to matter. So my vision for my life typically revolves more around stuff like that than my poker career. And I would say that that's something that's changed over the last, you know, ever since I did a course on emotional intelligence called Choice Center.
We're getting there. We'll
where really sort of put that into perspective for me, where I think in my earlier years, a lot of my self-worth was attached to my poker results. So if I was doing really, really good, I felt good. But if I wasn't doing good, I felt bad. And then I realized, like, that's not what defines me, you know, at all. Like, it's just what I do, but whether I never won another poker tournament again, it won't affect my self-worth one bit. And that wouldn't be true, in my early 20s when I had a lot to prove. I always had something to prove, that I could beat this and beat that. And anytime people doubted me, and I kind of like it. It's fun. When people doubt me and say that I suck and I can't win anymore, like a lot of these young kids who's
it's like being your back against the wall again, sort of.
It's like, okay, son, I'll just keep winning my way. You can keep chastising me about how bad I play while I smack you, son, year after year after year. All I do is win, 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 no matter what the people say,
Okay. So you're in the public eye a lot, obviously. You're very publicly outspoken. How on earth can you be an introvert? It doesn't make sense to me.
It makes a lot of sense, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe I don't understand the word well enough or something.
Right. So people think introvert means like, shy, quiet. No, that's not what introvert means. Introvert is basically like, so where do you charge your batteries, right? A lot of people, they feel more engaged, they feel more energy when they're social and they're around people. That drains my energy, right? I still don't. It doesn't mean that I can't be social or I'm not good at it. But so, for example, on a dinner break in a poker tournament, if I went to dinner with 5 or 6 people, I talk a lot, I spend a lot of energy, and then I'm drained for the rest of the tournament. So I don't do that. I go to my room, I nap, I stay alone. And I just really, really enjoy being alone. Like I feel really recharged. And then when I do have to have these weeks that are like I have coming up where I'm going to be on the go,
right.
I'm ready for it. And I'm charged up for it, and then I can survive it, if you will, because I have a pretty crazy November 5th through 13th in terms of responsibility. It's getting a little, I'm kind of anxious about it.
I appreciate that you gave me your time now and today on November 3rd. So, okay. We talked about Choice Center. I follow you quite avidly. What does 4444 mean? Is that something that can be explained in one sentence?
You could, so essentially, the way you could phrase it is like, and I won't ruin, this, it's part of the thing, but I won't ruin it. But basically, like, this means, I love you, bro. Like, it's as simple as,
okay.
It's like, I love you, right? And
okay.
There's reason, and so part of the thing that's interesting about the course, and a lot of people are skeptical about it, is because, we don't tell you the details of the exercises that you go through, because it would ruin it for you, right? So it would be similar to, like, the idea that if you watched a football game, right, but you already knew the final score,
right,
not going to have the same emotional connection to when you watch it, because you're like, okay, you already know what happens. If you watch the ending of a movie and then watch the beginning and you already know what happens, it kind of ruins it for you. So similar to this, a lot of what the course does is it mirrors your life and creates sort of through exercises different scenarios that you would experience and then see how you react to it, right?
Okay.
So if you knew like what this was, like, then it would ruin it for you.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, so I wouldn't go into detail until it's like, so what's that about? But
that's legit. Cool.
Yeah. So,
okay.
So, yeah.
What do you think is the most important thing you've learned during your time there at Choice Center?
I would say the thing that really speaks to me on a grand scale is the idea behind integrity, what that really means, breaking it down, and also the difference between being a victim and being responsible, right? So I'm going to touch on both those issues separately. Integrity is as small as saying, I'll meet you at 7 o'clock, okay? If you show up at 7:03, you're only 3 minutes late, right? But it's a broken agreement. Yep. It's a broken agreement. You said 7 and it's 7:03. So you ask yourself, if I do that in those little areas, where do I do that on a bigger scale? If I break my integrity so regularly, my character is weakened. All we really have ultimately is our character, is our integrity, in the sense that, like, what integrity means is doing what you say you're going to do. And every time you don't do that, you breach your integrity. Obviously, some breaches of integrity are much bigger than others, but we do it. I mean, obviously, I've done it. It's not like, I breach my integrity all the time, but to learning that, okay, so that's going to happen, acknowledge it.
Okay.
Be aware of it, and then say, what are you committed to? Are you committed to, what are you committed to doing in the future? So if you showed up 5 minutes late, for something, you acknowledge. You say, you know what? I acknowledge and I apologize for being 5 minutes late. In the future, I'm committed to making sure that I'm 15 minutes early, so that way you don't have to wait for me anymore. Gotcha. And then I keep my word to you, right? That's what integrity is, right? Yeah. You're going to make mistakes, but acknowledge it, move forward. The other aspect, and this is the big one, and this is stuff that's written in books. This isn't some, unique thing to Choice Center. There's a lot of these centers across the globe, and a lot of this teaching. But the other thing is the difference between being victim to something and being responsible to something, right? And this is very controversial for a lot of people. So look at it this way. I'll use an extreme example just so we cut to the chase. Okay. 35-year-old woman, right? Her life is a mess. She's a travesty. She was raped as a child when she was 12 years old, right? And as a result, she gave up on life. She, just didn't believe that anything good could happen, and it really was traumatizing for her, and it affected her. Understandable, right? It's an understandable thing.
Right.
The question is, who's responsible for her life at that age? Clearly what the rapist did is not okay. We don't condone that.
Of course.
It's not her fault. It's not her fault that she got raped, but she's 100% responsible for how she responds to it many, many years later.
Correct.
So if her life isn't working as a result, it's not because of the rapist, right? It's not because of him. He obviously did something dastardly and awful and inexcusable. But if her life isn't working at that age, she's responsible for the response and how she's handling it. So a sidebar issue is that illustrates it is it's not the event itself that creates the response.
Okay.
So this happened to two women. This is a true story. One woman lost a child. Both women lost a child to a drunk driver. They lost a son. One woman, obviously distraught, saddened by it. She started drinking heavily. She started doing drugs. She had 3 other children and basically checked out. She was just mortified by it, and so she just quit. The other mother had the exact same thing happen to her. And she started a thing called MAD, which is Mothers Against Drunk Driving.
Okay.
So she saw the incident and said, you know what? I'm going to do something about this to make sure this doesn't happen to other mothers, right? So the same incident happened to both people.
Right.
But one responded to it in such a way that was destructive to her life. And the other one, and again, I'm not blaming. I mean, it's a natural reaction to be distraught about it. The other one chose to take that as a fuel to do something great for herself. So every situation, whether it's poker, whatever it is, we can look at it from 2 perspectives, victim or responsible. There's no power in being a victim to your circumstance. There's no power in that. Saying, oh my God, I'm so lucky, I always lose the pocket aces, there's nothing I can do, I'm just, well, what's the value in sharing that? Who cares? Let's focus on what you can be responsible for. How did you get short in the first place before you got the aces? Oh, you made a slot. Well, let's focus on how you got there. Did you do everything the way that you're supposed to do it? And if so, don't focus on the bad luck, focus on the responsible version of that, which is how did you get to there in the first place? And if it was everything you're supposed to do, just be at peace with the result.
Well, that's something I will just publicly disclose that a few months back, it's something that you told me privately similar about the victimhood, and I want to just tell you again, thank you very much. That helped get me through something very personal, so thank you. Appreciate it.
You got it.
Thank you. Acting. You said that in the past that you believe you can transcend poker. Is that where you're headed? Maybe more mainstream sponsorship deals or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know if I said that exactly like that, but I certainly think that I enjoy those opopportunities, like doing TV shows. I mean, when I was a kid, I always wanted to be an actor. I find it fun. I've always found myself, I think I have a filmic mind, whether it comes from writing, acting, different types of things like that. So I find it fun. I don't do it because I'm trying to make a bunch of money off of it, of course. I do it because I enjoy it. And to some degree, I do think as an ambassador for the game of poker, the more that we do stuff like that, the more we bring people into the game, right? So the more mainstream people that know who you are or even like who you are, like the stuff like Vanessa Russo going on Big Brother, the more people are interested in the game itself and go, so you play poker for a living. Because there's still a lot of people that don't know that exists as a profession. Right,
of course. Okay, cool. Is there any specific company that you would like to stump for in the future, like in an ad campaign, like Phil Hellmuth did the Carl's Jr. or something? Obviously, you wouldn't do a hamburger or anything, but...
Well, the only thing I can think of that comes off the top of my head right now is Hearthstone. Blizzard.
Okay. Well, you featured in a movie called, I did some IMDb research on you, Detention, a Canadian TV show called Mr. D. You were in a Katy Perry music video. You were in Lucky You and X-Men Origins. Is there a specific role that you feel suits you? Or you could do...
Well, the one that was most fun out of those for sure was the Mr. D, because I actually got to act. And
that was like a whole episode. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, it was fun. Like I got to act. Like the episode revolved around me playing poker in a sense. So it was really, really fun working with Jerry D. He was a really funny guy. And that was really fun. Sort of... I think that, things are more like comedic, improv, stuff like that suits me, kind of playing a character, not necessarily looking to be this, like a Meryl Streep, who's really stretching, So I'm not looking to play like some, Primal Fear Edward Norton character, just something a little more like you'd see in an Entourage or Ballers or the new show that I'm involved with called The Four Kings,
Okay.
which is kind of a cross between all those things.
Okay. Can you tell us anything about the Four Kings, or not really at this stage?
Sure. Well, we've shot a few episodes already. We've gotten distribution with Sony. I think it's going to be fun. We've got a lot of cameos from a lot of really cool people. The show itself, it's called The Four Kings. It's about 4 poker players who moved east. They moved west, right? Kind of like swingers. And it's not about poker, though. That's what they do. They're poker players, but the episodes are not like, this guy is King Jack, flop is 10. There's none of that. There's really not many poker hands you're ever going to see in the show. The show doesn't revolve around poker. It's just what they do. The show revolves around like the drama they get themselves into, both in Vegas and California, and the sort of things, the lifestyle things that are real to what the struggle is like.
I'd love to see it. I can't wait.
It's gonna,
Cool. Well, you have an agent, and you've had an agent for many years, and I imagine that these types of things are the things that he would look out for opportunities for you to get involved in acting and stuff like that. Do you think that maybe more players need an agent, or to become ambassadors, to get their name out there? Like you said, when you appear on mainstream type of stuff, it by definition promotes poker. To get more poker players out there, would that be a good thing? Is that something that they ought to be doing?
Well, the misconception is that an agent actively looks for things for you, like in that area. That's not what happens.
Okay.
No, if you wanted to hire a PR person, that's what would get you those things. The agent, or typically what they'll do is like people will bring deals to them at times, like they want to use me for an appearance or something like that. But ultimately, he's the one that negotiates the deals. He looks over things. Brian is a close friend of mine. Like I bounce things off of him. I have a very, very good group of people, that are very, very smart, educated, that tackle, difficult issues in poker, the best ways to respond to them, and different things like that. So, he's a good sounding board in that regard. And like I said, we're very, very close at this point. But, as an agent, he makes sure that he's the buffer. So I'll give you an example of what, and I don't necessarily think that everyone needs one, because, there's just not a lot out there right now. Right? It's just not, worthwhile. There's an example of a time where I had an offer from a French company to do like a cell phone video game kind of thing. Okay. They wanted to pay me $75,000, right? And in that I had to shoot for 3 days of like filming stuff, and then also 12 appearances where I would have to like, travel and be all over the world or something like that for 75. So if I negotiated that deal, that's what I would get, right? Okay. Yeah, I don't know, probably not. So, but having Brian involved, by the time the deal was done, right? Okay. We negotiated. I got $350. Nice. And the 12 appearances became 3 appearances, and those appearances were in Las Vegas on my own free time, right?
That's a good agent.
So the difference is, when you have an agent, I was explaining to people, it's like if you're getting X, right? And you paid an agent 10 or 20%, right? If he gets you this much more, right? He gets a bigger margin himself, but you get this much more. So ideally, if you have a really good agent, and also, but more importantly, he protects me against being taken advantage of, because he's obviously a lawyer. He looks at contracts. He knows the underlying meaning of what's being said, and protects me from ever getting involved in something that would be, detrimental to my, brand or to myself. And his contracts are long. They're big. If you see a contract that's like 1 page, that's dangerous. You want to see like 1-page contracts.
My wife's a lawyer. I know all about contracts for sure. Last acting question, and then we'll get to a little personal, and we'll conclude. And again, thank you very much for your time. You have a favorite poker player, Jennifer Tilly. Why her?
Well, I don't know if she's my favorite poker player necessarily, but I love playing with her. She's a lot of fun. She's like so great. When she comes on these TV shows and episodes, she really hams it up. She makes for great TV. She just really loves the game. And I just always enjoyed her, She's been around the poker world for a little bit now. And she's just a breath of fresh air. You
have any sort of relationship with her or anything like that? You go, you talk a lot, you go out to dinner or anything like that?
No, not really. Like I see her at charity events occasionally. She's got her man, Phil Locke, which,
right, of course.
The unique individual that he is.
Yes.
So I don't see that. I just admire her. For the most part, I would say that I admire her from afar.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Mushu.
Yeah.
Is he around?
Yeah, he's around.
Okay. You call him your son, and you tweeted at some point that you love dogs better than humans. Wow. What can you tell us about your love for dogs?
Well, dogs are unconditional, right? They love you as long as you feed them, right? Love you no matter what. And he's got a personality. Like, he can be snippy. Like, he's a lot like me. He's got a personality. But I call him my son because essentially, as you know, I'm a vegan, right? And I don't really differentiate all that much the difference between human life and, animal life. I don't know that we have earned for any reason the right to look at human life as being valuable, more valuable than the life of a dog. Like, I don't get the rationality behind that. Like, we're a different species, of course, but why are we better than them? Based on what? Like, I think that we could learn a lot from dogs in terms of the fact that they're unconditionally loving, and they're not all that judgmental and hateful and bigoted and whatever. As long as you got a they love you. They don't discriminate. So, no, I have a love for animals. Obviously, I don't eat them.
Right.
And I understand that I'm not trying to make everyone become a vegan, although, there's plenty of studies that are showing that not only are certain meats like bacon and sausage, there's a recent study that shows that it's just as bad as you smoking cigarettes for you. And also like the environmental impact on what's, going to happen to our world in the next 30, 40 years. If we continue.
You mentioned Cowspiracy. I want to see that on Netflix.
Yeah, but ultimately also there's another aspect of like, I get it. We've always, eaten meat. People raise cattle on farms and do this kind of stuff in a very humane way. That's not the case in what we're seeing today, and just the cruelty. Like, I hate to use the word Holocaust because I don't want to like demean those that suffer through that, but it's like a Holocaust on animals when we throw them in a factory with no lights, no room to move. We take pigs that are smarter than dogs and we put them in crates that are so small they can't turn, and suffer. Suffer. They literally live in their own shit and feces and pee and urine, and it's like the chickens are debeaked and they're not let outside and they're left with no light. They live horrifyingly awful existences, right? Yeah. And these are creatures, right? These are creatures, and it's like whether you're a believer in God or not, like a lot of people talk about it, like, if these are God's creatures, sure, maybe you have dominion over all things based on what the Bible says, but does that mean treating them horribly?
Right.
Like,
you gotta be humane, right?
To do it, and we're way past that. We're way past that. It's if you've ever, people don't want to watch this stuff because it's disgusting to see. We eat a Big Mac, we just eat it, and we don't want to think about.
And you dissociate completely, right?
Yeah. Okay. There's an interesting book called Why We Eat Cows, Wear Pigs, or Why We Eat Pigs, Wear Cows, and Have Dogs as Pets. And really, like, there's no rational logic behind it outside of like society said it's okay. Like, we as a society, we think like eating a dog, ew, disgusting. How can you do that, right? Why is that so much more disgusting than a pig? Well, the level of intelligence and all that, because they're cuter, because we've designated them as pets. We've designated them as like our friends so that we don't eat them. Like, based on what, really? Right. It's arbitrary for the most part. There's no real logical reason behind it. So yeah, I mean, that's something that I'm very, very passionate about.
I'll never eat a pig or anything like that, so don't worry. Okay, one more. Yeah, you saw the keeper there, the amica. Okay. You've showed the world your house a few times, and then after it was remodeled again, and I noticed that you have a poker table. How often does it actually get used? Do you have?
It gets used for business meetings. Like when I have Brian come over or discussing a new show or something like that. People come here, we sit around the round table. But I don't play poker. I really don't play poker much at all.
Oh, that's such a shame. Would you ever consider like hosting something like a little event, something private with the poker table?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Save me a seat one day?
Maybe.
Okay. Okay. You made it a goal to learn Español. So, ¿cómo es su español?
Yo no hablo español. Porque, I speak a little bit of a lot of languages. Yeah. But, I feel it's very, very easy for me to pick up languages. Right. And I believe that if I lived somewhere for a couple months that I could pick up most any language. Okay. But Spanish is very, very easy, to be honest. Like, I understand it better. Right now I haven't spoken so long, and it's one of those things that's not fresh in your mind. It's very similar to Romanian. So, yeah, I find it interesting. Maybe that's a goal I'll set again, is to brush up on my Spanish again.
Okay, cool. Maybe for 2016. What excites you?
What excites me? Mm-hmm. Oh my God, this is going to sound so embarrassing, but I'm in this fantasy hockey league that I've been in since 1996. Okay. Right? The same league, and we have a keeper league where we keep guys since they're 18 years old or whatever. So watching the scores and stuff, and seeing that one of my guys scored. Like I have an app on my phone that tells me when one of my guys have a goal or an assist, and that excites me.
Okay.
Playing soccer. I've been playing soccer lately, and that's really, really fun.
Totally legitimate. Okay. What saddens you?
What saddens me? Several things. I mean, I wouldn't say it makes me sad, but like I have a real concern for future generations in terms of their focus. And again, it's a conversation about the PC culture and how humor when I was young was there to bring us together, right? I grew up in an environment where, I mean, literally, Toronto's the most multicultural city in the world.
Right.
So there's no like your black friends, Asian friends, people of all different colors, shapes, and sizes, right? And we used to joke about our differences. Stuff that people would be appalled by today. Right. Like if people saw me and Phil Ivey on the golf course, they would coin us the most racist, awful human beings of all time because of the way we needle each other, right? I mean, I can't even, it's so sad that like I can't even explain to you some of the jokes that we have with each other because people that like don't even have anything to do with it get offended rather than see it as like us celebrating our differences. We make fun of each other. We mock the fact that we're different. Not mock. That's not the right word. We celebrate it. We make rather than make it so. So now I feel like it's turned into anger. People are so quick to be angry about things you say rather than, we laugh at ourselves. Like sometimes it's just funny. Like I tell Jewish jokes. So my friends they tell me the best Jewish jokes ever. Like the whole stereotype about Jews being cheap or whatever. Right. Like what do Jews and canoes have in common? Do you know the answer to that?
No, I don't.
Neither of them tip. Just a joke, right? I get it. Oh, we're stereotyping Jews, cheap people, whatever. Funny, okay? It's a stupid little joke. Don't take yourself so seriously. You know what I mean? It's a silly little thing. I got a better one. I'll tell you later.
Okay.
Oh, I'll tell you. It's so good. It's the Ten Commandments joke. Okay. Ready?
Go for it.
So Moses brought down the Ten Commandments, right?
Yep.
First he brought it to the Italians. And they said, well, what are these? And he says, well, they're commandments from God. And he says, well, give us an example of one. And he says, well, thou shalt not steal. And they say, forget it. We don't want it, right?
Yeah.
Then they brought it to the French. And then they brought it to the French and they said, so we have these commandments for you. And he said, well, give us an example. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Right. They're like, we don't want it, right? Finally, they brought them to the Jews. And they said, we have these commandments for you. And they said, well, how much are they? And they said, they're free. He says, okay, we'll take 10. No, right? It's just funny. Like, it's just silly. Like, let's not take this seriously. If we can't joke about this kind of stuff, I mean, what kind of world are we living in here where people are too uptight? It saddens me. It really does.
I hear that. Okay. Is there anything that you would consider to be out of reach that you wish you could do?
Yeah, I would say so. Play professional soccer or hockey or, be an athlete on that stage. Like I was actually watching an indoor soccer game the other day and we were sitting there and I said to myself, I wonder if I could like put in 8 hours a day at 41 and grind and learn how to play well enough to be on this team. And, the oldest guy on the team is 36 and I was never good as a kid. So, I mean, the odds of that are slim, but I have this crazy belief in my head that I could probably do almost anything. Like I have fantasy sometimes of being able to like play in the NBA right now and just like,
Come on.
no, literally, like I have these fantasies where I'm the guy who just like has dead-eye aim from half court. And I just can half court and I hit 89%.
Oh, Steve Nash, right?
Like literally, I have these fantasies all the time. These like elaborate dreams of me, playing ice hockey, like on the left, on the wing and just scoring like 180 goals in a season.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is your kryptonite?
I would say that the thing that triggers my weaknesses in terms of parts of my personality that I don't love, that I obviously have, is when people are condescending or arrogant towards me, it triggers me to get even more condescending and more arrogant towards them. I don't like being put down. I don't like being spoken down to. Like I don't like when people talk down to me. I'm all for discussion. I'm all for civil debate. Like I said, to Vanessa Selps often about different issues that we disagree on. But when a kid like Justin Bonomo, who's, I don't know, in his 20s or maybe close to 30, talks to me like I'm a child and that he knows everything and I don't, and speaks down to me, especially paraphrasing the way that he did, I could easily be offended by it, or I could, and I found myself initially being like, I wanted to rage on it, you know what I mean? But I'm like, That's not responsible. let's handle this like a responsible person. So I reached out to him privately, discussed my views of what he said and how he said it and how, I found it to be unfair and unjust in terms of the way it was phrased. So, but yeah, I definitely don't appreciate, and I know that I'm guilty of this as well at times. I can be arrogant and condescending, and it's one of those things, it takes one to know one kind of thing, right? Like I wouldn't recognize those traits in other people if I didn't loathe them in myself. So those are traits that I'm aware of, and then I try to like keep it a minimum, and focus on being as humble as possible, focus on being as understanding, passionate as I can be. But definitely my kryptonite is when I see people do that, it triggers me to be like, literally like, who the hell do you think you are, biatch? Get all gangsta on them.
Okay. I think we got 3 more, and we'll wrap it up. We've learned that your PokerStars produced documentary will premiere on December 1st, 2015, obviously, in Canada. Obviously, poker fans all over the world, they're going to want to see it. But there are plenty of people, I told a few people like, I'm interviewing Daniel Negreanu, and they're like, who? So, they don't know poker, right? So how would you pitch the documentary about yourself to someone who doesn't know anything about poker? Why would they want to see it?
Right. Well, there's documentaries about a guy who walked a tightrope across one building to another, and then it became a movie, right? Not necessarily it's people are, interested in tightrope walking, but they're interested in the story behind how this guy got from where he was to decide to do this and to accomplish it. So I think the story of Kid Poker, or the documentary, is more a question of setting your mind to something and accomplishing things that would be way against what people would consider reasonable. And a picture into the life of someone, myself, who has succeeded in an environment that's very cutthroat and competitive, and done so in such a way where I have, made integrity like the most important aspect of the being that I am.
Interesting. Okay, cool. I'll watch it. Okay. The Daniel Negreanu autobiography will get written someday. What can we expect, and do you hope it'll be made into a movie?
I don't know, maybe. But what people can expect is they'll be surprised about a lot of things.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what? If I was going to do one, I'm going to do a tell-all. And that includes the good, the bad, the ugly.
Oh, boy.
It might include some 6 a.m. leaving Spearmint Rhino wasted, you know what I mean?
Wow.
Doing some stuff. A little bit of living the Vegas life. I mean, obviously I was living here in my early 20s, so I was living, a different life than I am now, which was really like somewhat of like the underbelly of Las Vegas, and stuff like that. But I think people would be surprised to see, it's for my personal life, with my with women and stuff like that. Yeah, I'd probably put some of that stuff in there. Yeah. Okay,
interesting. And to circle, I'd read it. Last question, and then we'll wrap it up. Let's circle around to the beginning. You've given hundreds, if not thousands, of interviews over the years. Let's pretend this is the last one that you'll ever give. What do you want to say? What's the end of the script?
I think the most important thing that I would add or want to send as a message to people is that the reason I have done all these interviews over these years is partly to promote the game of poker, but mostly to be an inspiration for people to see that they can achieve bigger and better things in their own life. And I hope that the ways in which I've lived my life is a model for how it can be done. Maybe not the only way that it can be done, but that if you set lofty goals, set them a little higher and reach a little higher, and even if you fall a little short, you're going to end up further than you would if you didn't set any at all. Look to how you can make a difference in the world for the people around you, for yourself, and realize that the crux of what it means to be a contributing member to society doesn't have anything to do with your accolades, your own personal wealth. It's the kind of person and friend you were to the people around you and the difference you made for society as a whole.
That is beautiful. Well, I can say that, obviously that applies to me. You've made a very big difference in my life, and I followed you for many years. And, before we go, I just want to tell everyone that interviewing Daniel was one of my 10 goals for the year. It was number 7 on my blog post, my top 10 goals for the year. And, I want to quote myself. I want to read what I wrote there. I was like, the opportunity to work with him on an interview will be a career highlight for me. So I just want to thank you very much for encouraging me personally to dream and to declare and enabling me to deliver. And I do hope that everyone who's watched it and gotten to the end here will also be able to grow, to learn, and to take some of those positive messages from you. So really, thank you so much for everything.
It was fun, man. Time for food and then soccer.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
All right.